we'll get into this first topic, man, since Demond has already got us where we want to go, man. For those that don't know, this probably happened sometime over either yesterday, this morning time frame. Reports came out. Yeah, reports started to come out that former Miami Dolphins head coach Brian Flores had filed a lawsuit against the NFL, citing being racially discriminating upon them because of their race and things like that. Also made allegations in terms of the Dolphins owner Stephen Ross incentivizing him to tank, to intentionally lose. Then also bringing up an interview situation that he had with the Denver Broncos dating back to 2019 as well, where he made allegations that John Elway and their executive group not only showed up late, but they also appeared to be intoxicated. And yeah, those are the claims. Hungover. Yeah. So intoxicated in some capacity. Yeah, so those were the main claims that he made. And to back some of that up, obviously he talked about the Miami Dolphins thing, saying that he had other people that could corroborate it with him. But the, I guess, big smoking gun situation was the hiring process with the Giants, where current New England Patriots head coach Bill Belichick is having a texting conversation with Brian Flores, and they're going back and forth, and Belichick is congratulating him. He's saying, hey man, I've been hearing from Giants and Bills that you're the guy, you're going to get the job. And Brian Flores is like, well, man, I haven't went back for my second interview. I just did a virtual. I go back in a couple of days. Who are you talking to? Who do you think you're talking to? And that's when Belichick says, oh, F, I messed up. I thought this was Brian Daboll, the Bills offensive coordinator, who actually did get the job as Giants head coach. So you can see where, some issues could be lying there and why Brian Flores was upset and decided to take this approach. But yeah, man, this is crazy in terms of just the allegations. So since it's multifaceted, okay, it's a lot going into it. If you could pull up his direct quotes in terms of what he first led off with about the Giants situation, just so I want to make sure I don't misquote him or paraphrase it too much. I want to make sure we're getting it directly from.
Do you want the actual lawsuit page then? Is that what you're talking about?
Either that or the quotations that he has. Like,
I was gonna say I could pull up some paragraphs from ESPN.
That works perfect, man.
It might not be quote for quote, but how they describe
that works
here.
Though, man.
All right, here it is. This is Giants. All right, I'll read through it. I got a couple paragraphs here. Flores also alleged that the Giants interviewed him last month for their head coaching vacancy for no other reason than compliance with the Rooney Rule, which requires teams to interview minority candidates for their open positions. The league has amended that rule in recent years and now says teams must hold an in-person interview with at least one external minority candidate for any general manager or head coach opening. Flores alleged that he spoke with the Giants via Zoom on January 18th prior to the team hiring former Bills assistant general manager Joe Schoen as its GM on January 23rd. He said that the next day Schoen finalized his interview date for the January 27th, and Giants co-director of player personnel Tim McDonald texted Flores saying he hoped he would come in and win the effing job. However, hours later, Flores' lawsuit alleges he received a series of text messages from Patriots coach Bill Belichick, under whom Flores worked for 10 years in New England. In those texts, Belichick told Flores he had heard from Buffalo and the New York Giants that you are their guy. Flores asked Belichick to clarify whether he meant to talk to him or Brian Daboll, who was also in the running for the Giants job. Belichick acknowledged his error and informed him that the Giants wanted Daboll. Sorry, I effed this up. I double-checked and misread the text. I think they're naming Daboll. I'm sorry about that. Flores alleges that his January 27th interview with the Giants, which satisfied the Rooney Rule because he was the first minority candidate to interview in person, was a sham. New York hired Daboll, the former Bills offensive coordinator, a day later. And then he talks about the Broncos after that.
Yeah. So I guess just at the beginning part of this thing, man, I guess initially my thought process was, how is Bill Belichick connected with this? Like, in terms of him having this type of information, right? Because he's not a part of that organization right now. And it's one thing to have connections there, but it's another thing to have connections in the hiring process to where he knows it. Like, that rubbed me the wrong way initially. I'm not going to lie to you.
Belichick.
Yeah, I just didn't want him involved in it because not in the sense of anything negative about Belichick. I'm just simply saying, like, man, how loose you have to be if you're Giants Bills that, man, you're even comfortable enough to tell Belichick, yo, man, we already know this is the guy that's probably going to get the job right here. This is the guy that we're going to be planning on hiring. That's all for me initially, right?
I guess he still has good relations with the Giants and their organization.
Mm-hmm.
He's probably a big reason why even Joe Judge got hired.
Yeah,
a couple
probably.
years back.
Absolutely,
Oh,
probably,
he definitely
man.
is. Obviously.
Yeah,
that's
definitely.
clear.
Yeah, so for me, man, I wasn't really a fan of that. But then as I got to go and dive into it even more, it just started to rub me wrong to the sense that, man, with a guy like Flores, to just think that, man, when we think of the Rooney Rule, it's designed for what? Everybody to have an equal opportunity, everybody to have an equal playing field when it comes to the interview process. But this doesn't sound like equal playing field. This doesn't sound like they're going into that thing and, hey, man, Flores, you get a free chance to really come in here and wow us when you already have your mind made up before he even comes in there. And that also is an issue to me. And that's where I'm trying to figure out, like, as we continue to break this thing down, because there's going to be a lot of layers with it, how do we get to fixing it, right? But to me, those are two things off the top of my head that I do have issues with, man.
I think the real BS part was trying to bring him in for that second in-person interview.
Yes.
Because he did do the Zoom, and could we say at that point maybe it was a little bit more fair? Because apparently higher ups, I don't know if it was the owner, there was a couple guys in the Giants that were like front runners for Flores. Like they wanted him the most. So once they decided on Dable, then we shouldn't have to go through, oh man, we just got to do this in-person interview to satisfy the Rooney Rule. If anything, it just goes to show the flaw in it. And we even talked about this when they did amend it a couple years ago. It's like,
that was last year.
Was it last year?
It was last year where they amended it where for the draft you get some draft capital now.
For both, I think, like general manager, executive positions.
Correct.
Is it even head coach too?
I believe so in some capacity.
But they at least added, I think you have to, is it interview 2 minority coaches?
So
and one in person, outside?
For the coaching element, you have to interview 2, one from outside source. So I think for the executives, it's just one outside candidate. Okay. Yeah.
And then if you hire a minority, you get a draft pick.
Correct.
And that at the time really didn't sit well with us either.
Because we're like,
we just want you to hire the best guy.
Correct. But as history continues to show, they're not doing that. And that's always been the rebuttal. The rebuttal is always, hey, man, they're going to hire the best candidate. They're going to do their due diligence. But these are examples where that is a flaw, where that is not happening. And it repeats the cycle. And for me, when I think of even Brian Flores, because he was also asked when he was doing some of his media stuff this morning, doing some of the interviews, they were like, well, hey, man, if you knew this ahead of time, if you had the text messages and you know it's going to be Brian Dable, why did you even go to the interview? And first of all, he was like, man, I was hopeful. But
that
I
is
felt
true,
like
you never know. I mean, because that's like hearsay. That's going back and forth.
Right, but I felt like
he could wow
for
them away and they
him,
could change their mind.
But the biggest thing I feel like for him is you're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't. If you go to the interview, you already know that, hey, man, they got their mind made up. Even though you have your best foot forward, we can all attest to conversations that we've had with individuals where we're passionate. We have everything in line. We're trying to tell you something, and that person does not want to hear it. Whether it's a significant other, whether it's a brother, a sister, we've a boss. We've talked to people where it's like, yo, listen to me. If you just listen, you would see I have a clear, concise, and valid argument here. But if your ear is already turned off because you already have your mind made up, predetermined, then that interview is not happening. That conversation isn't happening. And hearing this, that's what the issue is. So it's like, man, he had to go, because if you don't go, what's the rebuttal? Oh, well, you ain't really want that job. You weren't serious about getting that job. And for him, you're kind of stuck in limbo in that sense, man. And that's the part that's frustrating, because how do you make a stand? How do you highlight this issue, this error, or this flaw in the system while maintaining integrity, while trying to still keep a job in the NFL, and at the same time staying encouraged? Because it's very disheartening when you continue to hear this pop up every single year, and we can point to different things. It's not speculative. That's the other part. If we were, oh man, it's not a big issue in terms of lack of representation for minorities or people of color at the head coach or executive level. If that wasn't the case, if we could point and say, well, yeah, man, it's 10 coaches, it's 32 coaches in the NFL, 10 of them are minorities, that's different. But as it says here today, February 2nd, 2022, it's one minority coach in the NFL. It's one minority owner in the NFL. And the league is made up of what? Over 70% of minority players. So when you talk about that representation, it is a fundamental flaw. It is an issue. But it's just frustrating when we keep having to have these type of discussions, right?
What's going to happen with us two talking about it? What's really going to change ultimately?
Well, I do think what changes is this. It keeps the conversation going, because in the past, what has it always been? Oh man, you got the Rooney Rule. We ain't got to talk about that. Oh man, it's not systemic racism. It's not set up for these people to not be successful. And we just keep on moving on. But the issue is it continues to happen. We talk about the definition of insanity, right? If you continue to operate this way and the people continue to respond a certain way, no change is going to happen. So I do think that what Brian Flores is doing, even though it's gutsy as heck in terms of suing the NFL, I think it's important because it keeps that conversation going. And now that conversation is going to continue to have life, not just in the long term, but also in the short term, because it's still teams that have to hire coaches. And we're going to look into that a lot more, not just the podcast, but I'm talking nationally. When you talk about lawsuits, they're going to dive into that stuff, into that process, the minutia with it. And I think that is significant as well in terms of generating change. But it can't get to that point without having uncomfortable conversations, without a guy like Flores having to go this route of publicly putting these stuff on display, knowing what that's going to do. Because initially when you see it, you know, you got to draw the line. You either believe them or you're against them, right? You're either protecting the shield or you're going for the player in the whole, or the coach in the whole overarching, you know, situation here. But to me, I'm like, man, as long as the conversation is happening, I think we're closer to that getting adjusted versus not talking about it.
Yeah, because maybe this is a step of, now, obviously the Rooney Rule has good intentions.
Yeah, it does, yeah.
There's amendments made to it. I don't know. Do you get rid of it altogether then?
Because my question is this: if you get rid of it altogether, what even guarantees that you even getting that call now? Because if they're already doing it just to check a box, and this is a rule that's been in place, and it started with our guys here in Pittsburgh, it's like, man, if you take that away, and we're already saying that the rule is flawed in itself, well, what's the incentive for a team to go against it? What's the incentive for a team to just say, you know, like, why should I call that guy? I'm gonna call like the guy that I worked with 30 years ago, or the guy that worked with my brother, who worked with my cousin, who drove and got, you know, Hardee's breakfast for this coach 20 years ago. Like, that's been the method. So it's like, what will deter that from happening if you just got rid of the rule?
No, I have no clue.
That's the part that I'm stuck on, right?
Because we're talking about the flaws in it.
Yeah.
The other solution, like if you got rid of the rule, or even if you kept the rule, because obviously there's good intention by it.
Correct. It definitely is.
I don't want to make it definitely is. Just get rid of it willy-nilly. I'm thinking get rid of it to do something better.
Yeah.
The one thing I was thinking on the way over is, like, can you do, now there could be flaws in this, obviously, down the line. This could be like a slippery slope, but can you do some type of player involvement? You know how they have done with the Rooney Rule, where the teams have to interview minority coaches for their candidacy. Can you do where for each time you have vacancies, you have to do some meetings with the players to get their input, document it somehow? Because then after you do that, you have to look the players back in the eye.
Very true.
After that. But then I could see if the coach is sucking 2 or 3 years in, do you have to ask the players or get the okay from them to fire him?
But also,
that's something. I'm just
because I do like that, because I thought about that, and my pros and cons to that are this: I like the involvement. I like you're getting the voice from the players, because the players are the ones who have to work with them directly. But the problem is this: if it's the owner having these conversations with the players, who cuts the check? Who has firing power? So if you're the player, I don't necessarily feel that all the players that are going to be allowed in that, because you want to have the whole team. You're probably going to be anywhere between 5 to 10, the leaders of the team. Not every leader is going to have the same type of financial security. Not every leader is going to have the same type of job security where they feel that they can truly speak candidly with owners. Not every owner is Mr. Rooney. Mr. Rooney's an awesome dude in the sense that you can have those conversations and he will be receptive and you don't have to worry about repercussions. But I've been other places and that has not been the case also. So that's the only thing with that had me nervous. The other thing that I thought of was, you know how with concussions, right? They brought in the independent neurologist. So, hey, this player gets a concussion. You don't have to worry about this team doctor making a decision of, oh man, do I protect the player or do I go for what the team wants to do? And you don't have to have that player worried about, man, do I try to fight and go back out there or do I protect myself? The independent neurologist, he comes down, evaluates the situation and says yay or nay. Now, part of me says, okay, just like in most litigation, you have an independent arbitrator, right? Somebody that's going to be there to just hear both sides of it, to make sure that it's moderated and mediated and going the right way. But at the same time, they can kind of give you that outside, just non-biased feedback. I like that as well. But to me, I think the base of the issue is representation, because who at the end of the day, all of these things that we brought up, whether you're talking the player element, whether I'm talking independent third party, the decision is still being made by the ownership, right?
Yeah.
And we said at the ownership level, 32 owners is one minority.
Are they making all the decisions?
When it comes to executive level decisions, they sign off
For
on
head
that.
coaches?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That's on them. They say yay or
I
nay
was
to
going to
those
say,
decisions.
is it their executive director, president, or the GM really
it starts
making decisions?
with them. Absolutely.
How much would you say are hands off though?
No.
Are they all
Bro,
pretty
we're
hands
talking
on?
ownership, bro. Ownership of $1 billion business, right? Multi-billion dollar business. And this is your $1 billion investment, because remember, you got to have your money to get your team. You gonna let somebody else make that decision for you?
I don't know, because
Not at all, bro.
Like with the Patriots, I could see Kraft like giving final say to Belichick as like a GM.
Yeah, but who gave Belichick? Who brought in Belichick?
Right.
Kraft.
That's
And then
what I mean.
think about how long they stayed together.
Right.
You
so
see
it's
what I
gotta
mean?
be a guy, maybe a GM or
Right.
executive that's been there a while, that has
Absolutely,
the
man.
owner. How many
Absolutely,
people
man.
are that? Because I mean, there are some of these organizations that are turnstiles with those type of guys.
Very true. Very true. So that, to me, I just simply say, man, it's a lack of representation, because you don't have a lot of minorities that are going to be making those decisions. So regardless of the outside influence, regardless of whether it's players, whether it's an independent party, the decision is still being made by one particular group of people. And with that, it's not a negative, but in the sense of, if all I know is minorities and you're a non-minority and you come to me and I'm like, man, I got to decide between this non-minority that I don't know and this minority that I do know, or I at least know somebody from in his circle, I would lean to that guy, not because I don't like you, just because I know this guy. But the problem is when all of ownership is one particular, one particular set, one particular group, you don't get to have the parity. You don't get to have the diversity. And that is something that I think is an issue also. And when we talk about showing the receipts element of it, or even being able to have proof, it's like the proof is in the pudding. You look at how many coaches are African-American or of, just minorities versus non-minorities in the league is very grossly misrepresented. And it's been like that for a long time. But when you hear these type of allegations, that's the part that makes it a lot more interesting. And to take it a step further, to go into actual suing them, that's the part where it's like, it feels more valid than anybody just haphazardly saying these type of things, because anyone can say it. But to actually say that you're going to go and sue them, it just holds a little bit more seriousness to it.
Well, I thought it was stupid right off the bat that Flores got fired from the Dolphins. I can't remember if we were doing a podcast and they announced it live or not, but whenever I first heard that news, I'm like, this is absolutely stupid.
Dude.
For him to have 2 winning seasons these last 2 years with Tua and that mismatch of a team down in Miami, like, this is crazy.
Back-to-back
I thought he
winning
was a really
seasons.
good coach.
I think they said it was the first back-to-back winning season since early 2000s for those guys down there.
And I thought he was going to be hired immediately.
Yeah.
I really did. I mean, there were 2 more head coaching jobs that he is set to interview with.
He still has to go to the Texans, and I forgot the other team.
Texans haven't made a decision yet.
Yeah, they have not.
Even him getting fired was a little
David
questionable.
Culley, absolutely. You think what he did down there?
They were a disaster.
Yeah.
Right?
And he actually had them looking respectable, winning games this season, something that, nobody thought could happen.
No.
And without Deshaun Watson.
Right.
And my boy Tyrod Taylor.
At times. Davis Mills stepped up for him, though. But yeah, I thought Flores would be hired right away. Who knows? He still might have a chance. I know he made the comment, like, I'm putting my career in jeopardy.
He definitely is.
I could see him, though. Now, this isn't ultimately what he would want for sure, but I could see us signing him on as the DC here. I could see, like, Belichick having him up there as, like, the defensive assistant, though.
But think about what that means. You're supposed to be a head coach.
No, I agree.
You see what I'm saying?
That's what I'm saying, though. I still think he can have a career, though, ultimately.
Yeah, but that's the issue. You say I can still see him having a career. It's kind of like, hey, we're not going to let you get this far. We'll let you get here.
He could get back into head coaching, though.
But
you give it a year.
But we say that, but traditionally that is not how it works for minorities. No. For minorities, that's not how it works. You don't have a lot of Josh McDaniels as minorities. You don't get a lot of that. You think about Marvin Lewis. He lasted, but he didn't get that opportunity just yet. He ain't come back around, right? In terms of head coach, NFL, that ain't come back around just yet.
I don't think he was that good, though. I'll be honest with
Okay,
that. Like Jim Caldwell's the way better example.
So Marvin Lewis not that good. How many division championships did he win?
A few.
Okay. How many did Josh McDaniels win?
What, 0?
But yet Josh can get other opportunities, right? Why? Offensive-minded guy? Is that why? Is it because he was with the Patriots? Is that why? Like, you see what I'm saying? But
you could bring up different reasons. But we
could, but that's all I'm saying in terms of when people rebuttal like that, that is the issue for those minorities.
I do think it is case by case. Like Marvin, I don't know, Marvin Lewis. Maybe it's more because I was a Steeler guy and like we always owned the Bengals. Of course,
and I get that.
I think Jim McDaniels not Jim McDaniels. I'm sorry, Jim Caldwell.
Jim Caldwell. He's another example.
I think he's the better one because he went 9-7 his last 2 years with the Lions.
What about Lovie Smith? Lovie Smith went to the playoffs and got fired last year.
I think those are better. Like Marvin Lewis maybe isn't the best example for me at least.
Right,
just
and
because
that's
of the
fine
Steelers
for
stuff.
you. But as a whole in the NFL, it's not multiple coaches that can say they won the division multiple times. That's all I'm saying. Guys that get to come back and get head coach opportunities again.
Because I think with him, his last few years were pretty bad. That was the thing.
No. I get what you're saying. I'm just simply saying if his resume, because we're going off of resumes, right? Because if you were just going recency, it's like, well, Josh McDaniels, he was a coordinator, right?
Right.
He wasn't a head coach. But it's like, man, if we're talking resumes here, Marvin Lewis has a nice resume as an NFL coach. That's all I'm saying. Baseline. He has a good resume. But he hasn't got that opportunity again just yet. That's like, it's certain things like that. And I'm not beating the table for Marvin Lewis, but just in the sense of we can see multiple occasions now where it's not the same for both parties. That's the big part for me. It's just not the same. And that's the part where the Rooney Rule has been trying to improve it. Bring up Herm Edwards is another one. Yeah, I could get it.
I think a good comparison to Marvin Lewis would be Jeff Fisher, actually.
Okay, fair enough, yeah.
Because both had success here and there, but ultimately, end of the day, records around 500, but Jeff Fisher got that second opportunity with the Rams.
True. And like I said, I don't want to make it into we're comparing and contrasting each and every. Absolutely.
It's impossible.
Absolutely. But the one thing that is not impossible, that is not hard to see, is the lack of representation. And that's ultimately what my man Brian Flores is fussing about. But that was the first part of it, right? The second part of the allegation, the big thing, was the owner, Stephen Ross.
That's hilarious.
$100K a game to tank. Now, that part for me was, I was like, bro, this is crazy. Because you never think, like, people always talk about tanking. You hear fans talk about it. You come up, you talk about, hey, man, you got to tank, man, get the best draft position and stuff like that. And it's fun to talk about, but we say, man, it's fun until you get a Doug Peterson who actually tanks. And then you're like, oh, fire that guy. Integrity. And you hear this allegation, and I keep saying allegation because none of this has been proven just yet. And that's why I'm not going to be up here. We acting like, oh, yeah, this is 100% true. Either party. It's allegations. This part is. The Rooney Rule part, not allegations. That's proven. But for this part, this allegation right here, where, if this is true, this is crazy. This is a terrible look if this is true, man. What was you like? When I thought of it, I'm just like, man. My man Damon brought up the gambling part. I'm like, definitely that. I'm like, bro, we be hollering about DraftKings. You think people gonna want to put money down if you questioning that part? Like, yo, what was your thoughts though, man?
He's just kind of being straight up.
Yeah.
He's just kind of being straight up. We want the number one pick.
Yeah.
We want Joe Burrow.
Mm-hmm.
At the same time, it's not good. It's just not good. It's not a good look. You don't want the league that you're watching celebrating.
Tanking.
You don't want it incentivized. I'll put it to you that way.
What's the difference, though?
Yeah, what's the difference? That's what I mean. And part of it's just like, oh, we're being straight up. We want this number one pick. We're rewarding you for losing, so we can get this number one pick. There's that.
Mm-hmm.
It's just not good, dude. It's not.
I was waiting to hear you like
part of the other side though is like, yeah, you get that number one pick. You have an Andrew Luck then. Think of how different they could be if they had Joe Burrow.
It could change a lot, man. It definitely
and that's
could.
The whole thing, even too, with the whole shady meeting that he had with Brian Flores, with the prominent QB.
It's nuts.
Was it Brady? Was it Watson? I don't know, but think if they had Brady, they'd be in a way different position as an organization right now.
It is nuts. Like, me thinking about that, I'm just like, did you really? like when you really like, I get why you're doing it because the logic, yes, it makes sense logically, but it goes against everything that the NFL stands for.
Flores in a terrible spot.
Yeah, absolutely you are.
Because how could he look his guys in the eye?
And that's one of the things that he said in terms of when they kept asking him, hey,
that's
man.
Why I respect Flores for doing that. Like saying no. And then even leaving the yacht. I don't even know if I'd leave the yacht. If the
that was nuts, bro. Yeah, that was nuts,
Brady
bro.
coming. Come on.
That was nuts.
You stick around for that meeting.
That was nuts.
TB, I know you're up from New England. Why don't you come down to Miami?
You dealing with that, bro. But then at the same time, it's like, man, for Flores, you're in a bad situation because if you take the money and you tank, we're all going to say, what about him in terms of his coaching ability?
Oh, yeah, bad.
Bad, right?
Yeah.
But if you don't take the money, you're in this situation.
And then maybe get fired, too.
Yeah. So I was like, man, I'm like, dude, you put him in such a compromising position. But for me as a former player, it just sucks because it's like, man, the one thing that we love as players is the on-field part because we say fans don't matter, media doesn't matter, and them suits and the suits don't matter. And we talk about suits like executives, GMs, owners, because we know when it comes to actual like.
Because you could see them wanting to tank.
Right.
Not saying they get incentivized or anything, but they could want to tank just because, we're going to have a better draft pick. This
so
could
it's
change
like
the
we get that part, but for the players, man, you're affecting livelihood because if I'm tanking, I'm not playing my best. If I'm not playing my best, I'm not going to get paid like that because you, in terms of the Dolphins, you might say, hey, man, we paid you to tank, but that team over there that doesn't know about this agreement, they're going to look at this film and say, what? That's not a good player. That's not a smart player. I don't like his game. Why should we pay him 10 mil? Let's pay him 4 mil. That's a big difference. But that all stems from these allegations that are made against Stephen Ross right here, which is, like I said, just crazy. But then you get it, and he's like, man, I got people that can corroborate it. And that's the part that I am going to be interested to hear because this is a steep allegation. Like, it's one thing to sue the NFL when you're talking about systemic racism and the hiring process. Yes, it's proven, it's there, but now you got to figure out how to fix it. And I don't know how to do all that just yet. But this right here, in terms of the allegation, there hasn't been any proof for this just yet, but just the allegation in itself is massive. And then you get your boy, I say your boy because, it's your boy, Hugh Jackson.
He took the money.
He pops up and he's like, I too was presented with a situation like this, a proposal, an incentive. And they was like, hey man, how big was the bag? If Flores get $100K, we saw what your record looked like. Like,
we see the memes. Hugh Jackson's richer than Elon Musk now.
But when I thought of that situation, I'm just like, man, so what if he did take the money? Now he's in a situation where we're just viewing him and laughing at his ability to coach.
That might have not been the best idea to come out like this if he did take the money, or no?
I think
behind the scenes.
No. Think about this though. I think for what he was trying to do, from the way I took it, is this: we don't care about people, what they're going to say about us individually. We're trying to change this system. So if it takes me embarrassing myself by saying that, yes, I took the money, my integrity is in question here.
I don't think he officially said that.
Right. He did not say it. He didn't say it. But based off the Browns record and obviously him injecting himself in the conversation.
Flores,
yeah.
He's able to pull off winning records.
Absolutely. But based off what he said, it looks like, dude, were you tanking? Because, man, it looked real tankish if that was the case. But I think in the end for Hugh, it's more so, hey, man, if this did happen, if I am telling the truth, I don't want it to happen to somebody else. Because you see how I look right now. You look at how Hugh looks right now. Like, man, we laugh about Hugh because of those 2 seasons, those 2.5 years, right? Yeah. We laugh about it. But if that was the case, and it's like, dude, they were paying you to tank, you're in a bad situation. What do? You go the Flores route, then you're unemployed. You tank, you take the money, we're laughing at you. So that's the short term. But then even long term, it's like, man, why would anybody want to work with either one of those guys going forward, right?
Yeah.
Because if you're thinking about Flores, you're like, well, hey, man, maybe this guy isn't all in terms of if we have an idea that isn't popular outside of this organization, he's not going to be committed. You don't want to work with somebody that's not going to be all in. If you're thinking about Hugh Jackson, you might be saying, well, hey, man, that dude, he ain't got no integrity, but that boy, he took the money. I know who he is, and I'm good. So it's like, man, you're stuck in either way, but it was all because of what? Ownership allegedly introducing that to them. And that's the part where it's like, man, we got to figure this thing out.
Yeah, that's not good.
Dude,
You don't
it's
want
not a good
this
look, bro.
for your league.
It is not a good look, man.
Definitely don't want this at all.
It is not a good look, bro.
Trying to think of anything else in related to that. No, I can't think of anything right now.
Well, I guess the last thing I had, and this goes back to the sports gambling part of it, right?
Mm-hmm.
How significant in terms of these allegations, right? Do you think we would feel or see a reaction like that with the gambling part if these were true?
What would change in gambling?
Yeah. Do you think we would see a change in gambling in terms of football games?
Oh, wow.
Because in the sense of this, right? Think about we come in
What
here.
are you thinking?
Well, because think about this, right? You got your big Deke investments. I got, no, in all seriousness, right? And I stack my paper, right? So we go back and forth about our gambling segments, don't we? But we're doing this with the thought process of what? If I'm evaluating, you watch a guy on tape, you feel like, hey, he's going to do what you saw him do to the best of his ability. They're going to both be trying to do what? To win the game. But then you might see something questionable happen. Whether it's a call, whether it's a play call, a player doing something, you're like, makes me think about the Vikings game, right? Vikings and Saints at the end of that. Man, we laugh now, but it's like, man, if that's true,
Scobie.
Is that scope? Is another price. Like, man, what's going on with this situation right here? Was that what Scobie? 13 seconds, Buffalo. Hold on now, man. Was y'all?
Oh, man.
I'm just, but in all seriousness, though, like, it can open up that worm bot. That's what I'm saying. Because now you have to go back and start to comb through and ask yourself, like, man, when the Steelers played the Dolphins and they went cover 0 blitz right before halftime, was that a Flores call? Or was that a Stephen Ross call? You know the touchdown that we had? Okay. and what did that do? It flipped the game, did it? Yeah. And remember, they called timeout beforehand. Because beforehand, they had a fence defense that where they were playing prevent, let you catch it underneath and then tackle it.
Football calls.
Okay. That's all I'm just asking. That's all. You know me. I'm not a pointer finger. I'm just an asker of a questioner. That's what I do, funny. Brother. Yeah, man.
What would have to change or what would change? I don't know. Because part of me was thinking, whenever people brought up the gambling aspect, I was just like, don't bet on the bad teams. But at the time, the Dolphins weren't. Think about the way the Dolphins ended. They could have made it to the playoffs. Not that season, but
last season. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah. Huh. I don't know what changes. No, you brought up scenarios outside of the bad teams. Where it's just like that one play in the NFC
It just makes you question, like, man, is it rigged then?
I don't really think that.
Because if an owner is willing to...
I still don't really think that, no.
Okay. Because I would say if an owner is willing to do that, where do they stop? Because they control the league, do they not? They make all the decisions, do they not? They control the puppeteer in terms of Roger Goodell. They're in control of all of that. So that's why, for me, it just made me start to question, like, I know the players don't hire the referees. Do you hire the referees? So fans do or do not hire the referees? Fans don't hire referees?
I think EA does for their Madden referees. Oh, my God, dude. I got robbed yesterday.
You see what I'm saying?
I got robbed.
So that's the part for me where I'm like, well, when I see anything questionable happen and I know one of your owners have already or allegedly incentivized him to tank, like, where do y'all stop it? Where does that line get drawn at? That's all. It just makes me question it, man. Yeah.
What do you think should change? How does anything change with that?
Yeah, well, the biggest thing that you keep hearing me talk about is representation. Now, the problem with that is when it's time to purchase teams, it's still not as simple as, oh, this guy has the most money, he can buy that team. That's not how it works. They have to be allowed. They have to get access to that. And who gives the access? Who says yay or nay? Ownership. They have that decision. So that's the part where I'm still trying to figure out on my end, like, yo, well, how does that whole dynamic work? How does that whole dynamic change? Because obviously I ain't got billionaire money, so I ain't never had to look into it like that. But it's something that needs to be discussed.
Yeah, I think that's crux of kind of what we're talking about, gambling, the bribery, and then back to the Rooney Rule and the interviewing process kind of goes back to the owners then, right?
It does.
You want owners like Mr. Rooney.
And
that's
the owners were the one who created the Rooney Rule. That's the funny part. They created the rule. They clearly know it's an issue with the rule, but they're the issue with the rule. It's just a circle. So we're trying to figure out how to change that up. But man, this whole situation is crazy, baby. Crazy.